What is your oh shit, I've got to get the hell out of here right now story? Living in Baltimore some years back, and I was driving home through a rough area of the city. Sitting at a stoplight behind an already stopped car, another pulls up next to me on the right. Not really thinking anything of this, the light turns green. Neither of these cars move, and I see a car zipping up behind me. I look to my left, and I see two guys running towards me. I'm so thankful that I left a good deal of space between me and the car in front. I hooked it around the car in front and sped off. Pretty sure I was going to be a victim of a carjacking, or maybe something worse. Glad they ill-timed their plan and I gave myself that space. Lesson here is always keep your head on a swivel in Baltimore. When I was hanging out with my ex, and I saw the drug dealer pull up, I had around 30 days clean, and even though I wanted to use I just couldn't do it anymore. I grabbed what I could carry and left. I left for good and now have 12 years clean. Was sleeping at a friend's house, went to the kitchen to get some water, her father hugged me from behind. I was 14, I guess, never went to their house again. I was at a new OBGYN for pain and a cyst on my ovary. The doctor looked to be in his late 20s. First he asks, are you sexually active? I said no. His response, why not? You just don't have a boyfriend, or what? I just kinda gave him a weird look, like a what the hell does a boyfriend have to do with this look? Anyways, then he went to do an internal exam and there were bruises on my thighs from bouncing my baby daughter up and down. He awkwardly rubbed the bruises for a few seconds and asked me if someone hurt me. Then, while he had his fingers inside me, he said, oh wow, they did a great job stitching you up after your baby because you are tight. I froze for a second and then sat up. He asked me if I knew how to give myself a breast exam, and I abruptly said yes and got up to leave. He grabbed my arm and said, well, I'm going to show you how to do it anyway, to make sure you're doing it right. I walked out as fast as I could and didn't even check out at the nurse station. I was so uncomfortable and felt so disgusting. We were digging out some dirt and rocks to make room for some steps to a lower portion of the patio that had a gas line running to a fire pit. I'm there with my boss and supervisor and all of a sudden I hear a whooshing sound of depressurization of a gas line and sprint away. Turns out it was only pressurized with air and not gas at that point, and we just had to get someone to come fix the hole we made without needing to evacuate the job site. My boss gave me shit, but I'll have the same reaction if it ever happens again. I was in downtown New York City, a couple of blocks away from the WTC, gawking at a fire. There were tons of people milling around watching. They had blocked off some streets, and I asked a cop how I could get around to where I needed to go further downtown. He told me which streets were closed, but that they might expand it, so I should get moving. The conversation was pretty casual. As I started walking away I looked back, and he had his radio to his ear, and whatever he heard, he panicked, went as white as a ghost, and started yelling for people to move further back. I turned around and jogged the hell out of there and made it to the Brooklyn Bridge before the first tower came down. I was driving north on I-65 in the middle of Indiana. The sky was getting dark, the wind was picking up, it started hailing. I turned on the radio to hear that a tornado was nearby. I determined it was behind me, going from southwestern to any and about to cross over the interstate. Other cars were driving slow or pulling over because of the rain and hail. I was hauling ass to get away from there. I lived in South Everett for a couple years. Was walking home from the bus stop to my apartment, which took me behind the Home Depot. Suddenly a van starts following me. I hear the side door slide open and look behind me to see a man with the top half of his body hanging out the slider door looking at me. I took off running towards my apartment, literally running as far as I could. The van started going faster. By chance a guy was pulling out of the driveway of my apartment complex, sees me running for my life, and stops. The van immediately turns around and speeds off. Guy asks if I'm okay. I ask him to just stay there and please watch me walk into my apartment, which was the building next to his. He did, thank God. I started carrying mace and a very large knife the next day. A 500-pound hog got loose at the state fair and started charging right at me. I've never run so fast in my life. I was walking to my house from my ex-house very early in the morning when I saw this little girl with a backpack running for her life from two big street dogs. At that moment I didn't think, and I ran towards the dogs and missed a kick. The two dogs came after me biting my legs and arm. They were out of control and these were like the longest 5 minutes of my life. I couldn't stop them from biting me. The little girl kept running until I didn't see her anymore. It was just me and the dogs attacking me. I tried to climb a fence to get inside a house, but I couldn't when a taxi driver stopped and went out of the car with a short stick and he tried to scare them off, giving me a chance to run, and without thinking I got inside the car. The guy just ran a couple of times around the car with the dogs behind until he got in and he drove off like really fast. He took me to the hospital where I got a lot of stitches on my legs, arms, and hands. That guy is my hero. Every now and then I go to his taxi stop and give them sandwiches or something. We never knew what happened to those dogs. I was solo camping in the woods during a phase where I wanted to be a survival expert. I hiked out, miles from any roads or building, built a shelter, and then hiked back the way I came. Less than a mile away from my camp, I found a dead coyote, decapitated, gutted, and laid out like a sacrifice or something. The eyes were gouged out, and it was strung across a big flat rock. A rock which I used as a marker on the way in, so I know it hadn't been there a day before. I ran out of there as fast as I could, knife at the ready, probably 10 miles back to my house. I still have no idea who would have done it, but I know I didn't want to run into them in the woods alone. I was the only white guy working at a Hispanic restaurant, and I don't speak Spanish, that's part of it. One night after work I get invited to drink at one of their houses. All is going good, we are drinking, and I even danced a bit. Then after going outside to the back patio to smoke a cigarette I come back inside, and the guy whose house I was at has a knife and is yelling at these three coworkers of mine blocking the front door, yelling in Spanish that no one is leaving. I knew that much. A bar patron who knew me grabbed me and pleaded to the guy just to let me and him out since we had no part in it. The homie wanna lets us both out. I asked the bar patron WTF was that when we are outside, since I can't speak Spanish, and he says the guy thinks my three coworkers are sleeping with his wife and has probably about to kill them. I got in my car and got the F out of there. I was on a restaurant and they were using a propane tank to power an outdoors heater. Suddenly the tank started to catch fire and I got out quickly because I thought it was going to explode. The staff turned the tank off and everyone laughed at me for overreacting, but damn I got scared lol. My friend and I met at Waffle House for lunch. A guy came into the restaurant looking for a piece of paper that he had accidentally left on a table. The waitress didn't know where the paper was located and might have thrown it away. The guy got upset saying the paper was important and he was going home to get his gun stored under his mattress. My friend and I quickly paid our check and got the heck out of the restaurant. Mine is more laughable and my dad likes to tell it, but it's the only thing that comes to mind. I was with my dad at a car shop his friend owned. He was visiting said friend and had just brought me along. They were working on some old car and I wasn't paying much attention as an 8-year-old, but they sprayed something on a piece of the engine as they were turning it on or hitting the gas or something, and it made this big flame appear for just a second or two. Well, in that second or two I had ran several yards to the street because I had seen way too many movies of cars exploding. There were like 5 men including my dad all standing around and they were laughing their asses off. My husband and I were heading out of town. We saw a guy on the side of the highway pacing under the overpass. I asked my husband to take the exit and go over the overpass and take the next exit to continue on the highway. The second we took the exit, the guy jumped in front of a semi and killed himself. He was a freshman in college. The semi driver was 72 years old and 3 weeks away from retiring. I cannot imagine what the driver's going through. Was waiting for the next bus in a bus station at 2 a.m. in Minneapolis. A security guard outside told me to stay within the camera zone. I sat down and waited, all alone except a couple of junkies in another part of the station. Suddenly a guy comes in and walks up to me. This guy dressed in a black hoodie wearing a skeleton mask stood right in front of me, didn't say a word, just stood there and looked at me. When he started to walk away, I bolted out of there, ran down the street, and luckily found a 24/7 Walgreens.